Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly Power Lounge. This is your place to hear authentic conversations from those who have power to share. My name is Amy Vaughan, and I am the owner and Chief Empowerment Officer of Together Digital, a diverse and collaborative community of women who choose to share their knowledge, power, and connections. You can join the movement at togetherindigital.com. And today we are diving deep into the dynamic, so many D's, into the dynamic world of media retail, of retail media with a true industry innovator. Deanna Behrens, did I say that right?
Deanna Behrens.
Behrens, I said it right.
Yep.
Woohoo! Director of Media and Strategy at VML, brings an extensive experience in the CPG space and has pioneered retail media strategies across 7 major retailers. What makes Dina's perspective particularly valuable is her unique ability to translate commerce intelligence into actionable strategies that deliver results. And when she's not just witnessing the retail media revolution, she is actively shaping it. And we are thrilled to have her to share her insights with our community today. Welcome, Deanna.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, it's so good to have you here with us. You are local here in
I
Cincinnati,
am.
right? Where I'm also recording from. And we've had you come and speak, right, with our
Yes.
local Cincinnati chapter, and just loved hearing all of your wisdom and your experience. You're so generous with it, which is just so exactly the MO of our Together Digital community and members. So it only felt right and natural to, extend that and bring you into and let you meet our entire
I
group
love it.
of members from across the world. Really, we're kind of growing, and we've got people popping up in different countries too. So holla
Mhm.
to all of our friends who are listening with us live today. Remember, you're always welcome to jump into the chat, ask your questions. This is for you. We want to know what you want to hear. Obviously, we have some great questions for Dina, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure you get what you want out of this conversation. All right.
Yes.
So before we dive into all the fun media trends, Dina,
Mhm.
I would love to hear more about your journey in becoming the director of media and strategy at VML and what
Mhm.
experiences helped to shape your approach to navigating the CPG and retail space.
Yeah, so I started off my career in the media side, really learning like the traditional, which was a great foundation. Really got in the forefront of what digital is today. It's so drastically different than when I started.
Right.
But I still remember I walked into one of my roles with Perfetti Van Mel, so Mentos.
Okay.
And in that role, my boss was like, "You're going to run the shopper marketing for Mentos and Airhead." And I'm like, "What is shopper marketing? I have no idea what you're talking about."
Um,
And so I was like, "Cool. What does that mean?" And he's like, "We'll go to the Path to Purchase Institute, one of the conferences, and you'll figure it out." I was like, "Cool." So I went, and at the time there was not many retail media networks. It was literally like, "Hey, how can we get people to think about going in store to buy the product?" And
mhm,
so with Mentos, if you think about it, they're selling a lot of their products in convenience stores. They're
mhm.
also selling it in mass, and they're selling it in grocery. So here I am trying to figure out, how do I get people at the different moments? Because I mean, if I'm going to advertise in value chain versus, a C store, it's so drastically different, and how
Mhm.
you approach it, how you look at it. And then to make things even more complicated, they decided they wanted an overarching approach to add Airheads into the mix. And Airheads and Mentos are two very different
Very different. Mhm.
products and two very different audiences, but we were
Mhm.
able to figure out a amazing program that we were able to put to the forefront. We're able to kind of figure out the nuances between all of them. I was introduced to News America at the time, which is now Neptune.
Mhm.
It's so fun to see how things have evolved and changed over the years. Got my first introduction to Dun Humvee, which is now 8451,
Mhm.
and working with that and trying to have those conversations with the brand team at the early stage, like, "Hey, you're actually moving the needle and getting conversions at store. I need you to put money into Kroger, but
Mhm.
not put money into your national advertising," which of course he was more passionate about because he's helping to build the ad and
Yeah.
getting it out there, and it's more of an awareness driver. And so seeing that from the early stages really kind of shaped what I was doing, because when I left the industry for a couple of years and then came back, we had retail media networks, and I'm like, "Now what is this? Now what's happening?" And it drastically changed, and it's evolved over time, and we'll get to a little bit of that. But like, COVID definitely made it fast
Yeah.
moving, changed it for everyone. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned on my journey is you need to be agile. You need to
Yes.
ask the questions, be curious, be willing to be challenged. And that will help you get further in your career, and just embracing that gray area. Because if I looked at my boss and said no, I would never have been able to
Right.
like uncover the different things and unlock all the different things that got me to where I am today.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that story and experience. I think it points out a couple of really important things for, I think, for our listeners, is that
Mm-hmm.
if you're in a position of to give opportunity, like give it. The fact that he pulled you aside and was like, this is the thing you're going to go
Yep.
for, like that opportunity opened up an entirely new career
Huge.
path for you. Right. And here you
Mm-hmm.
are doing it for so many important brands. So opportunity is huge. Also, your willingness to
Yeah.
push aside the self-doubt, I'm sure that we all feel, right?
Oh,
And
there was
say,
many of those.
I am going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to learn and I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
grow. So you pointed out flexibility and really, I think, too, embracing uncertainty, right? I
Yes.
mean, a part of succeeding is failing, but so often, how many times do we let good potential opportunities go by because we just don't think we're quite enough yet? I
Yes.
love, love, love that you like stepped up into it and you've run with it. And now, here you are.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, as you mentioned, retail media, it's kind of been a slow rolling, but it really
Oh, yeah.
started coming on the scene, in 2010, or the
Yeah.
2010s, whatever we call those.
I
From
know,
your
right?
right, from your perspective at the forefront of this evolution, what fundamental shifts have you witnessed that marketers need to understand or could understand better?
I think the biggest thing that a lot of people are starting to really see as RMNs really come into the play is it's not, and I kind of alluded to this with my example of the national ads versus the
Mm-hmm.
localized retailer specific ads.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about like, how do I reach that consumer? What is that
Yep.
consumer playground? Where is the most interactive place can they interact with? What is that consumer journey?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I reach them? It's not like, hey, brand is now awareness and then retail media is conversion and consideration. It's
Mm.
not that anymore. It's all
Yep.
very fluid. And I think COVID really streamlined that and really pushed that forward. And if you think about it today, like I have used this so many times, but I can be sitting there watching a TV show, and then all of a sudden my TV is blown up and all the way around it has a QR code, and I'm
Yeah.
buying the product that I had no intent when I sat down or even thought about buying.
Mm-hmm.
And I've bought it now because it happened to be popped up, or it could
Yep.
be when I'm even scrolling and standing in line, waiting for a concert. Like I
Mm-hmm.
100% buy something while I'm standing in line. Like it is so fluid and
Yeah.
so changing that if you
Uh-huh.
aren't willing to understand that journey, willing to kind of make those divides and
Mm-hmm.
being flexible, I think that is something that is really, really missed, and something that we have to be very cognizant of as we're being more marketers. It's definitely consumer centric versus a sales focused anymore.
Sure.
It's all about the consumer and what the
Yeah.
consumer needs.
Finally.
I know,
Yeah,
right?
I just feel like that's like been a drum we've been beating, some of us,
Oh
for a
yeah.
very long time, of like, what does the consumer want? What does the consumer need? They
Yes.
drive purchase, but we can't just sell them to that, like to them. We
Mhm.
need to know what they're like, why they're buying, what they're buying, when they're buying it, to your
Yes.
point, right? And I think that is another funny thing just within the digital marketing space. I just laugh about QR codes. Man, how long have we been talking about QR codes?
I remember it, like when I was at Chiquita and I was like,
Uh-huh.
well, let's put a QR code on the banana, and it did not work at
Right.
all. And now it'd be like, yeah, let's do it. It'll
Right.
totally work. People use it
Everybody
all the
gets it.
time.
Everybody gets it.
Yeah.
Well, and it took a couple of things, right? It took, I think, COVID, right? Because
Mhm.
restaurants started using them instead of like menus. And then also the technology, right? Before it used to
Yes.
be you had to upload a app, some random
Oh
ass
yeah.
app to your phone. You're like, I don't want to upload anything. Now
No,
it's native to our phones and our cameras.
exactly.
So problem solved. But yeah, I
Oh
do. I
yeah,
love
that
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 QR
that
codes are
was a
finally a
game
thing.
changer when that happened. It was just like, oh, I don't have to do an app and I don't have to like go through something. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was
Absolutely.
amazing.
So yeah, it is funny. And I do think that's like a really great thing to consider, to continue thinking about, right? Like how
Mhm.
is even just our like native, our phones
Yeah.
and other technologies, our watches, all that stuff working. Cause like you said,
Everything.
those are opportunities.
Mhm.
I think like about like Waze and maps and things like
Oh
that and
yeah.
how they're plugging in advertising, and it's all
Oh,
geofenced
all
based
the
on where
time.
I'm at. I'm sitting at a stoplight. It's like, hey, there's a Wendy's
Yep.
2.3 miles ahead. I'm like,
Exactly.
do I want some
Exactly. Like if you
fries?
think about it, like even as you journey into a grocery store nowadays,
Mhm.
the very first thing you do as soon as you park is check your phone to see if you missed anything.
Yep.
And then you go into the store. And there's a lot of advertising opportunities that people are
Mm-hmm.
missing if they're not taking into that consideration in that journey.
Yeah.
Because, hey, I have you as an active audience. Like, why am I not reaching that?
Right.
And I think it's just, again, thinking about the little things. Cause like when I
Mm-hmm.
started, it was, okay, let's create our persona, and homemaker Mary is at home and she is going to be listening to the TV while she's getting ready. And then she's going to listen to the radio on the way to this drop off the kids. And now it's like, okay, I can do it on the phone. I can do it on their watch. Like, what's the
Mm-hmm.
other things, And I think, in my opinion, like, I think the one that's really embraced it, which is very weird to say this, is more of that convenience channel. If you
Yeah.
go into a convenience store,
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing a lot more of that, more innovative ways. Like,
Yeah.
I went to fill up my gas the other day, and SPCA had an ad on the actual gas tank itself. And I'm like, okay, I haven't seen a gas tank wrap before.
Right.
I've seen all kinds of gas station advertising, like the header cards and, the
Right.
full, but I've never seen it wrap. So I was like, that's kind of
That's
cool.
fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. I love all those kinds of creative strategies and
Yeah,
ways
it's just fun.
to get involved, because like you said, I love that. And I hope we pull that as a quote. It's brand is not awareness.
No.
It hurts to hear that for how
I
much
know.
time and love we put into brands and
know.
branding, but it's absolutely true. Like, you
It
have
isn't.
to actually get it out into the world and in front of the right people at the right
You
times.
do.
And because, again, our attention is so in so many places, it almost has to be
Mhm.
in an unexpected way or
Yes.
a really convenient way. That's the other thing I was going to mention, is that I also feel like in an era, I might be getting ahead on my questions, but
It's
like
all right. I have
in an
two.
era where we're, dealing with a lot less access to first party data,
Yes.
cooking, all of that. I think like there's an exchange opportunity, right? Like,
Mhm.
if you're willing to make things more convenient for me, I'm probably willing to give you more information. Do you feel like that's
Oh
the
yeah,
case on your end?
100%.
That's just me
100%.
personally.
It's so changed.
Yeah.
And like, you constantly have to think about it. Like, I remember, and this is totally dating me, but like when I would get my phone updates, I would always go through every single app to see what updates change. Now it's like, I don't have time for that. So I'm sure it's tracking me more than I realize.
Yeah.
And when I mentioned tracking, I think it was part of our discussion back in February.
Mhm.
Everyone's like, yeah, I went online and I looked at how much I was being tracked and I had to make a whole bunch of changes.
Yeah.
And I think people are just so used to having it be an easy era. And like, if
Mhm.
I need something, I need it now, or I can get it now. I can
Yep.
find the information. I'm like, oh, I have this whatever and I need to Google it. Google is
Mhm.
like the everyday thing, but
Yeah.
you don't realize how every day it's changing and there's always
Mhm.
something else being added and adjusted. I mean, AI is taken off like crazy.
Yeah.
And so what are they doing with AI to make sure it's getting there? But I think it's
Yeah.
also trying to be smart about all the new technology
Mhm.
and embracing it the way you need to and being very true to the brand.
Yeah.
Because if you're not true to your brand and your foundation, then you're going to have problems.
Yep.
And that problem is going to rear its ugly head multiple times until you step away and create that
Mm.
foundation of what you're trying to stand for and
Mhm.
how you're approaching it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing that's going on in the era today is like,
Mm.
what do you stand for? What is that
Yes.
foundation? Like,
Yeah.
if I don't know that, and I
Mhm.
mean, when I started, it was like, oh, let's create a social media persona and sometimes we'd actually have a whole packet of like, how do you talk about it on this channel versus that channel? But a lot of places don't have that baseline. Like a
Yeah.
lot of places that I've started, they're like, what are you talking about? Why would we need that? I'm like, why
Mm.
wouldn't you need that? Like,
Right.
you never
Yep.
know what's around the corner and you just
Mhm.
have to be prepared for anything.
Right.
And things that you don't even realize were a thing.
Well, and I can imagine too, right, with all things retail, trust and loyalty, right, are such a huge priority for brands, especially within the CPG space. You don't want them to have to keep reconsidering every week, right? You want them to go and grab
Yes.
your product every week. And
Yes.
in order to do that, I think you have to have some sense of consistency. So I think
Yes.
that's such a great point there too, that I just wanted to elaborate on before I go to my next question is that, yeah, brands, if you're not acting in alignment with your values from the start and you're just shifting with
Mhm.
the sands or the winds of time
Yeah.
or whatever it is that's going on, like you're actually doing more harm than good.
Yeah.
Because I do think too, that's a whole nother discussion. Actually, for those who are listening, who are in the Detroit area, actually on the 14th, we've got all of our meetups. So Columbus is meeting in person, Cincinnati's meeting again in person, in Detroit. And I'm going to make the trip up to Detroit and see them. And we were prepping for the panel and having this exact conversation. The customer journey has to be more frictionless than ever. And then again, like, people want to buy from brands they feel that they're in alignment with.
Yes.
And if you're not listening to them, then it could dig you a hole for sure. Let's talk a little bit about the relationship between brands and retailers, because it is changed, right? I feel like it's almost like flip-flopped the roles a little bit. And like, from what even I remember, and again, I've been more on like the digital marketing and advertising side, but I've also worked on like P&G and Conagra and Smuckers. So very much kind of have heard the stories. I'm really curious to know, how, as those relationships have changed, how are you seeing some of the more successful CPG companies adopt their approaches to like those relationships, to those partnerships?
I think it's very fascinating, because we're in an era where you're having retail media networks is really, and I think this is something as an agency you get lost with, really, because you're working for your client, and say your client is Conagra, right? And Conagra is then calling on Kroger, and that's their customer, and then you're working with 8451, and that's technically a vendor partner for you, but it's really technically, because they're owned by Kroger, they're a customer. So it becomes this whole big thing. And the thing that's interesting is RMNs are starting to try to get more alignment with their parent company. Are they close to 100% being there? No, of course not. But they're making small strides to that. And so they're becoming a little bit more intentional with like their JBP commitments, their upfronts, their any commitments that they need. But at the same time, as the customer side, and so the brand side, there's also that commitment so you can stay on shelf, and that merchandising commitment that you have to adhere to. So it's like trying to weigh and balance the merchandising commitment with the marketing commitment, and it gets very tricky very quickly. And I think what's probably going to happen, and I'm seeing some of these actually happen, successful, I don't know, I think we're still in that test and learn era, if you will, of I'm going to push back on our retail media network and say, no, we're not going to hit this crazy number that you're giving us, because the number is always growing off of what you spent versus what you committed to. And you have various different things. It could be innovation that's coming out. It could have been, price increases that weighed into this. And so it's making it harder. And all that numbers are doing is going up and up and up and up. And I think retailers are starting to realize that they need to be a little bit more strict, or not strict, but less strict on what they're trying to do to kind of lower that expectation, because the expectations are becoming astronomical and almost unapproachable. And I think the ones that actually partner and have those honest conversations and actually have those JBPs are the ones that are moving things forward. But even then, I've been in many JBPs that are not the most effective of conversations, and the partnership is not really there. It's more of like he said, she said, and it gets crazy. But then the ones that are like, okay, this is what I can do, and this is where I'm willing to meet you, and then kind of showcasing and weighing that pros and cons, I think those are the ones that, like, hey, we're willing to test this, are the ones that are starting to be more successful. But it's also harder because you've got the smaller brands that aren't even at the table. And it's only the big brands paving the way. So, and some of those are successful and some of them way not successful. So it's an interesting dynamic. And it'll be interesting to see. I think they're starting to get some shifts. I'm definitely seeing that across a couple different retail media networks and how they're shifting things. But at the same time, it's a unique environment to be in, and it'll be interesting to see if the pushback from brands actually makes the retailer kind of come down a little bit and make it more realistic.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch, because I've been seeing, so like I used to work on Gillette, for example, and direct to consumer. It's like, it used to be like the big brands, big CPG names, they ruled the shelf space, they got the premium spots, they obviously have the means, the budget, everything. But then all of a sudden you start seeing these disruptors, which come in the form of direct to consumer brands to start with. So like Harry's is a great example. example,
Oh yeah, very
of a
sustainable.
direct to consumer brand to start, only online sales, and then eventually worked into retail. And it's so funny because then I was actually working on Gillette at a time when they were like, how do we get DTC off of the ground? We got to do it fast, And so it's just really interesting to see that kind of change in dynamic.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I was kind of curious, considering the fact that direct to consumer is still like a thriving and growing thing, it's definitely disrupted those traditional retail relationships. How do
Yep.
you see DTC strategies influencing retail media, and how can established brands, like maybe some of our clients, adapt these approaches
Yep.
into within their existing retail partnerships?
Well, I think in order to really kind of embrace that DTC mentality is you really have to like make sure you're working your data, you're working that personalization,
Mm,
and you're kind
yeah.
of like being really flexible. Because if you think
Hmm.
about DTCs, they do a lot more of they're willing to take risks.
Hmm.
Whereas the bigger brands don't want to take the risks as much. They're wanting to do the tried and true. Maybe have a test and learn budget, maybe not.
Yeah.
Whereas D2C is like, you want to test and learn something? Sure, we're all in. Like we have nothing
Hmm.
to lose but to keep trying. I mean, I know I'll watch like Shark Tank, and it's
Yeah.
fun to watch things on Shark Tank and then like see it come to life in real life afterwards.
Yeah.
And and it kind of is influential. It's like, well, what have they been doing? And I think it's a thinking outside of the box. It's
Yeah.
being flexible. It's really
Hmm.
kind of leaning into that data, that personalization, and
Hmm.
taking it to the forefront and not being scared to try something.
Yeah.
And I think the D2C has that really mapped out. Are they successful in some of the things they've done? No.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things they are doing. It's very
Hmm.
grassroots. And I think
Yeah.
we forget about the grassroots technology and the opportunities that grassroots provides.
Hmm.
I know when I started, it was like, hey, let's talk about grassroots. Now it's like, I don't hear that word ever
No.
anymore. And I think D2C embraces it because they
Hmm.
have to be scrappy.
Yeah.
And they don't have as many dollars. So it's like,
Hmm.
if I'm going to do marketing, this is what I'm going to do. And if it doesn't
Yeah.
work, I'm going to try this.
Pivot. Yep.
Whereas brands are constantly like, I want to keep doing what I'm doing. But
Hmm.
after a time, that starts to kind of flatline.
Yeah.
And if you're not constantly trying something different, you're not going to keep moving forward. And I think
Hmm.
that's something that the number one thing that D2C
Right.
can 100% influence the brands is
Right.
try something
They
new.
are. They really are.
Embrace the ambiguity,
Hmm. No, I
embrace
agree.
the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry, Gillette. One more blade isn't going to cut it. I love you
Exactly.
guys. Love you guys, but it
Exactly.
ain't. And it's crazy because this all happened. Gosh, I think this was back in 2011, 2012, I think.
Hmm.
Um, or maybe just after that. So I mean, it's not even been 10 years. And I just even remember like the sheer amount of disruption. And then again, like once you see it, you can't unsee it. I would start to look around and be like, okay, yeah, the Honest Company, they
Yeah.
were D2C first.
Oh,
Harry,
huge.
Dollar Shave Club, like there's so many brands
Mhm.
now that are
Yep.
doing that, like testing and learning, being nimble, agile, getting their product, and because they've got their customer right, and then they've got the power to go in and be like, we want shelf space.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing is they are really embraced like their persona and they
Yeah,
know their brand heritage. And I
yeah,
think that's really key because if you think about
yeah,
the ones that you've named,
hmm,
all of them you can pretty much say they stand for this and
yeah,
they stand for that. And it's not
hmm,
ambiguous of like it could
yeah,
stand for this and it could stand for that. Like I
hmm.
know in my time at Mentos, like we changed our brand position so many times.
Oh,
Because we were trying to find the right niche. And I
yeah,
since then it's changed.
sure,
And so it's fascinating. You have to change
yeah,
because it doesn't always stay the same
hmm,
because each generation is different and how
right,
they approach things is different. But I think at the end of the day, these direct to consumer or direct D2C brands are really embracing that. They know
yeah,
who they are.
hmm,
And they won't change for that
right,
because they only have a couple products at this point, and then
yeah.
eventually they grow.
Yeah. Yeah, it is smart too. I agree. Because it's not changing for the sake of changing or to the
Mhm.
point of whiplash, right? Because
Yeah,
that creates distrust or disloyalty within
agreed.
your customers because they're like, who the hell are you? I don't understand what you sell or what you do. So I do think they're maintaining that consistency. But you're right, these bigger brands, that feel and seem so set in stone. It's like, how can we embrace that mentality a little bit more and really
Yes.
look at it as evolving, right? It's not about a big shift or change.
Mhm.
So, that was one thing. I'm coming back to a different question that I,
Yeah,
I skipped
totally
ahead
fine.
on, because I think it all comes together nicely with this. Since you've worked across like 7 major retailers, that's quite a
Right.
few developing media
Mhm.
strategies. How do you approach the challenge of creating cohesive brand experiences? Because we've
Mhm.
touched on that a couple times now, while navigating the unique requirements of every retail platform. That's
Each
hard.
It is very difficult. It's very, very challenging because everyone's different. Everyone has a
Mm-hmm.
little nuance or a little different thing. Like if you think about like Meyer, for instance,
Yeah.
Meyer is very community driven.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to make sure that what you're doing at a Meyer is really leaning into that community aspect that everyone has. Whereas a Walmart, it's all about the value.
Yeah.
Whereas Costco is about the experience. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like you have to embrace the different nuances of each retailer. So you have to make sure that overarching, you have a good brand foundation, that your overarching brand is looking the same, having that consistent feel and consistent look. So then if I see an ad for Walmart and I see an ad for a national ad, or I see the Meyer ad, I'm seeing that consistent look and message, but
Mm-hmm.
the message itself will be different. So I will have more of a community sound mindset for that Meyer
Mm-hmm.
shopper versus that value driven and that one-stop shop for like the Walmarts of the world. So it's
Yeah.
just like trying to figure those out. But then it's also kind of leaning into each of the different retail media networks benefits. And it's like sometimes you have to lean into those third party providers outside of
Mm-hmm.
the retail media networks because they don't offer what you need to reach your consumer. You have to
Yeah.
understand who your target audience is.
Mm.
And you also have to be, and especially in today's world, you have to be in a place where you're willing to kind of adapt your audience because it's not always the current and lapsed households. It's like, where else can I unlock other new things?
Yeah.
Because people are changing, people are evolving. And at the end of the day, you
Mm-hmm.
don't always want to be getting those Gen X or baby boomers because eventually they're going to age out of the system. You've got to keep
Right.
innovating and keep getting the new generation in there
Mm-hmm.
and thinking beyond that.
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting to like make sure you have that baseline, but it's also being willing to change up the creative, change up the
Yeah.
tactic that you're going at it
Mm-hmm.
with those retailers, and maybe even adjusting the audience slightly
Mm-hmm.
because it's a different person who's shopping at a Meyer versus is
Oh
shopping
yeah.
at a Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
And in today's environment, everyone's shopping at multiple different places. So how
Yep.
can I get them if they're going to Walmart for their everyday groceries, but then they're going to Costco to get those big bulk items? How
Yeah.
do I make sure I'm getting to them on that? Or if they're going to Costco for their date night for all
Right.
all intents and purposes, how do I reach them
Sounds like a
there?
great date night.
So
I love me some Costco.
I
That's
know it's
hilarious.
very fascinating. It's very
It's
much an experience. Very
yeah.
much got to get to Costco. If you're a
Yeah.
Costco person, you are a Costco
It is
person.
an event. It is an event. Well, and that leads so nicely into our next question, right? Because
Mhm.
everything you just mentioned, like it just goes to show how fragmented this whole
Yes.
commerce landscape has become. What are some strategies that you have found effective working with your clients and with your team for maintaining that competitive edge
Yeah.
as well? Because yeah, it's just a lot to
It's
manage.
It's a lot. It really is. And I think it's extremely challenging because the industry is changing,
Hmm.
especially from a measurement standpoint. And I think
Yeah.
that's where we kind of double down on is you've got to really understand the data. Like let the data tell a story, have that generic, maybe it's ROAS, maybe it's impressions, whatever it happens to be. I wouldn't say it should be impressions.
Sure.
ROAS is definitely the better option.
Yeah.
But you look at that ROAS across the different retailers, see where it's netting out. At the end of the day, everybody's doing, even though they're supposed to be a generic media math, everyone
Yeah.
has their own version of media math. So understanding how they're getting to the media math, understanding how you need to adapt it to the
Hmm.
different retailers you're working with, the different partners you're working with, so that you can really see a clear picture of what that data looks like across everyone and really leveraging your own first party data to really kind of unlock that. And I think that's how
Hmm.
you remain competitive
Yeah.
is really
Okay.
showcasing like, okay, I did a CTV ad for this, and was my ROAS, and looking at that. But it's not just looking at the ROAS; it's looking at the video completion rates, it's looking
Mm.
at the click through rates, and really kind of looking at that tactic by itself. Like, was this effective?
Hmm.
Yes, I feel like it was effective. Okay, now I'm pulling it into the bigger campaign of everything I did. How was it effective there? And kind of asking those questions. So it's
Hmm.
not just like taking the data and say, okay, I'm just going to stay with CTV forever. It's
Right.
more of, hey, I'm going to shift this because I'm
Hmm.
seeing in this area that shoppable recipes is doing much better, or
Yeah.
whatever it happens to be, whatever that
Yeah.
component is. But
Hmm.
it's really kind of thinking it in two veins. It's like, okay, for this campaign, how did it perform?
Hmm.
For overarching, for everything I've done this year, how did it perform? And really kind of pushing that boundary and finding that measurement element that really kind of leans into it. And sorry, Piper loves
It's
talking
all
about
right.
retail
Piper.
media, so she is
It's
here to
okay.
help.
We've got questions for her too. We'll leave those to the end for her to answer. Now, I love it. Yeah, that's so great. I think priority dollars and looking at how and where you're spending, personalization, customization, like all those things are
Mhm.
definitely competitive edges.
Yeah.
I love it. This is why we have our live listening audience here with us too. Amy would like some clarity on what JDP is. We talk all these
Oh
like
shit.
terms, and I'm like, oh yeah, we
Sorry.
should define.
Sorry about that.
Let's help Amy out.
It's a joint business plan. So typically your top 10 customers, sometimes it's more than that, will actually meet with the retailer itself and have a meeting directly with that retailer to talk about what is their plan for the year. And they kind of can come together to kind of build out a plan on how to reach the customers. Because at the end of the day, the ultimate goal between that manufacturer and that retailer is to sell product at that store. So they have those joint business plans and joint business discussions. Some of them are called top to tops. So depending on the retailer, it could be a smaller one and it goes to top. But JBP is kind of the general term. And then when it comes to retail media networks, they're having a JBP directly with the manufacturer to say, hey, I'm going to spend XYZ amount of money with you. And I'm going to get you this CPM efficiency. Or I'm going to give you this added value or this report, things like that. So they also have their own JBPs. So JBPs can be a JBP with a retailer. It could be a JBP with an RMN, retail media network.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Again, what's the win-win for everybody? How can we optimize and
exactly.
leverage the data, customer information and data, which I know certain retailers are really protective of, right?
Yes.
Because I mean, obviously it's a huge advantage for them,
It
but
is.
yeah, having those partnerships is kind of a good way to start to break down some of those limitations and barriers. So back to where you were before, you were talking a lot about like key performance indicators, KPIs, metrics, ROAS, which is return on advertising. In case you've not heard the term before, listeners, how do you approach, how's your approach to measuring success evolved as retail media has matured? What metrics should marketers be prioritizing? Because I think there are such a thing as like those feel good vanity metrics that sometimes it's just nice to see, but did it actually yield anything?
Well, and I think I went to a conference earlier this year and it comes down to like there's like 4 levels of measurement. Not everyone's at all 4 levels. So at first you have the traditional media, which is your typical like clicks, impressions, very things that aren't really telling you a lot, but it's telling you how many people you've reached, how many people you've captured. And then you've got the level 2, which is getting a little bit more into like, what's my return on ad spend, but it's not giving you like the control group versus the post control. Like, and I think that's where a lot of people are kind of struggling a little bit. It's like, okay, did my media actually activate, or was it just because we happened to run a merch event during that time? Like we had a buy 3, get 5 or whatever it is. And so what else was in factor? And I think we're getting into a place where like level 3 is where you're really being able to get kind of that clean room analysis where you're really focusing in on that specific area and tactics. So clean room is where you're taking out all the other extra areas and just focusing on that one tactic to see how it performs. And so that's where a lot of people are trying to get to. But the other thing is at the end of the day, we're all aiming to get to level 4, which is where I was kind of alluding to earlier, where I can take what I did at Kroger and I can take what I did at Walmart, put them together side by side, knowing that the metrics that I'm using are identical and I can compare them across the board. Right now, if I take what KPM sends me versus Walmart Connect, totally 2 different things and various different things that they have in play. So it's really understanding how they're getting to that metric and kind of asking that question and not being afraid to ask the question, where are you getting the metric? How are you doing the math? What does that look like? I have a meeting next week with one of our retail media networks asking that very question, because every time they come back, it's always like 3 times higher than everyone else's. So it's like, okay, well, where are you getting it and how are you doing it? And there's a lot of duplication. So understanding the duplication that they might be picking up across other places, because that's also a factor. Because at the end of the day, you're not just going to run an offsite ad. You're probably going to run an on-site ad. You're going to have some search. You're going to have a whole bunch of other stuff. It's very omni-channel focused. And so you have to consider like, okay, am I just looking at this versus that? And I think at the end of the day, the easiest one is ROAS, but I think it's also incremental sales. Because how much was incremental? Like how much did I actually get on top of this that I wouldn't have got had I not run this campaign? And I think that one's the key one and any kind of metrics that you're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you move the needle? But I love a couple things you pointed out there. It's like, even when you see like really high or like three times like what it normally is, or three times benchmark, sure, it's a reason to celebrate. But like you said, it's also a reason to question, because it's
Yes.
like, I mean, toilet paper during COVID, come on.
Oh yeah,
Like,
of
talk
course.
about metrics you might as well just throw out the window. Like, it's
Hmm.
hopefully we will
Yep.
never have a run on toilet paper like we did during COVID.
Well, right now it's eggs,
Yeah,
so
it's
you know.
true. That's true. So you have to think about those external and
Hmm.
economic and other
Oh yeah,
situational factors, like you said, that could have caused that spike instead of just attributing it to maybe the wrong thing.
yeah.
So yeah, don't celebrate too soon.
Yeah, it
Not
could
to
be
be
weather. It
pessimistic,
could
but
be so simple as the weather. I mean,
yes.
when we were fighting the fires in California, it was
Hmm.
probably just liters of water, like, that went spiked. And
Yeah.
you have to think about those factors too, to see
Hmm.
if it was an isolated incident or it's actually something that will be a long-term impact.
Yeah. Well, on the happier side of like the positive aspect
Yes.
of, data driving kind of something that was obviously like good and worked well, or that you were
Mhm.
able to take in leverage to pivot, I was wondering if you could share an example where data insights had led to maybe an
Oh,
unexpected
yes.
opportunity, a
Mhm.
strategy pivot that then helped to deliver some results.
100%. I think one of the ones that really sticks with me, and I'm going to have to be kind of vague
Yeah.
on some of the details, but it's really looking at audience insights and seeing what we can do to unwrap audiences, because there's so much more with the data that's being provided. Like, various different networks are providing additional data, first party data that's available, and they're
Hmm.
making it more readily available for their marketing efforts. So a lot of RMNs will still default to the current and lapsed households. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Exciting, not exciting. It's really thinking beyond that. So if you're looking at a specific occasion, trying to think about like, okay, I'm going to be advertising within Valentine's Day or something, and you're thinking like, okay, beyond just the boyfriend and girlfriend, husband and wife, mom and kids, dad and kids getting their things. What else is out there? Well, Valentine's Day is really kind of like
Yeah.
taken a big emphasis, and it's a new thing. It's like, is there a way, an opportunity to really see who the Galentines are and really
Yeah.
kind of double down on that? And that's
Hmm.
something that is like, okay, it's a new trend. How can we capitalize on this
Yeah.
trend? How can we bring it into our media and really kind of unlock that? And so that's some stuff that we've done on our side of just really unlocking and
Yeah.
seeing new households and new opportunities. And so data has definitely told us that story. It's like, you have another person out there. Like, how can we unlock that? Is it,
Yeah.
hey, there's a trend with a certain I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, I don't know why White Lotus comes to mind, but something maybe
Yeah.
White Lotus they use in their
Oh
TV
yeah.
show that people are like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I need to have this.
Yep.
It's like, how can I unlock that from a data perspective? Because there's
Hmm.
something else going on. Like, people are
Right.
really spiking with like White Lotus. Why is there something I can tie into White Lotus to bring
Hmm.
into my advertising? So I
Yeah.
think it's things like that, and just really
Hmm.
kind of thinking about your audience beyond just the stereotypical current and lapsed,
Yeah.
and thinking a little bit more in depth on what you're actually doing. So that's what we've done, is we've actually been able to identify audiences that you're like, I never really thought about that audience, but yeah,
Yeah.
that could be an untapped market. And by doing that, it actually became one of our top performing
Yep.
markets. And we were like, yeah, we're using that again. We're using it
Hmm.
across other retailers
Yeah.
beyond just the one that we used it with. So again, looking at the data, kind of understanding like, who is this person, what some of the
Hmm.
interests, what some of those cross opportunities, what some of that things that are popping in the everyday that we
Yeah.
can really kind of leverage within our stuff. So it's kind of a combination of data and then understanding what's happening in the market. And I
Yeah.
think, kind of tying this into probably a future question, is like, AI is helping with that too. So
Yeah.
it can like take the data, show like, hey,
Hmm.
what's happening? Like, why is this popping during White Lotus?
Yep.
And it could say, well, this is what's happening. So you may not be familiar, but you can actually tie it into what you're looking for and then
Hmm.
pull it back with other data to tell that story.
Yeah. No, I love it. That's great. Yeah, I agree. And we've had the conversation a number of times here on the podcast and at Together Digital events. It's just like AI, it was literally built for pattern recognition. And we
Yeah,
have a big data problem within our industry, right? Where we have more information than we even know what to do with, because our human brains can't process. So yeah, if you're going to
exactly.
use AI for something, please don't use it to write crappy copy.
No.
Like,
No, AI.
Instead, give it all the analytics and the data and say,
Yes,
find me some insights, find me
yes.
some new markets, tell me
Give
where
me
I'm
the
not
trends.
reaching somebody, right?
Yeah, like you
So
have
funny.
to breed the AI to like make it work to the best,
Yeah.
but it will take the stuff that it will take you weeks to do and does it
Mhm.
in seconds. And then you
Mhm.
take that and you really make it work hard for you. And I think that's really what's happening in a lot of the different RMNs is we're actually having a lot of automation bidding
Mhm.
that look like modeling. We have a lot of even dynamic creative that's going
Yeah.
on in the marketplace that can it's
Mhm.
all AI based,
Yeah.
taking it to that next level and making sure that
Yeah.
we're reaching the target when we need to reach them, where we need to reach them, and how we need
Mhm.
to reach them.
Yeah, and the way they wanna be reached. Yeah, it
Yes.
made me think too as you were talking, it reminded me, like, I think one of my favorite brands that has really taken that consumer insight and leveraged it and did something good with it was Old Spice. They
Oh
know
yeah.
that women are buying the product, so everything that
hmm
you see, it's like yes, it's advertising Old Spice, which is body wash for men, but they are talking to the women,
Yes.
as long
And
for
that's an
the
audience insight they have unlocked.
totally, and it was so funny 'cause
100%.
I remember this happened, like, more than 10 years ago, and everybody's, like, so gobsmacked by it, and I'm like, "But
Yeah.
we do 80% of the buying, like, we are 80% of the buying power in the
Oh,
country. Of course
yep.
we're buying the freaking body wash. Yes, you should be talking to us because,
Exactly.
yes, I want my man to smell like a man, and I'm choosing the scent, not him, because I
Yep.
gotta be the one to smell him."
Exactly. And I'm yeah, exactly. It's like why do I want him to smell like something else? Like
Right?
no.
Yeah, and then
It's
it's just
funny.
so there's just so much opportunity there as well too.
hmm
Again, whole another fun little rabbit hole we could go down, but
Oh,
we don't
totally.
have
It would
all
be
day, so
no, we don't, unfortunately.
all right. I'm curious, your journey in the industry, like you said, you kind of have been here from like the beginning of
Mhm.
those retail media networks. Is there any particular like commonly held belief that you've changed your mind about since you've been in the
Yeah.
industry?
Yeah. I think it's becoming more and more apparent. Like, there's always been that marketing funnel. It's always been, I've done so many campaigns, so many presentations with that marketing funnel saying, oh, we got the awareness, you got the
Yeah.
consideration, you got conversion.
Hmm.
And I always add the loyalty because I want them to come back, right?
Yes.
It's not that same. It's not there anymore.
Mhm.
It's so not there. And I,
Yeah.
I talked about it a little bit earlier in our chat about how I can go from not even being in the mindset to purchasing in like
Right.
2 seconds.
Yep.
And that belief has totally went out the door. I think you have to make your ads shoppable. You have
Yeah.
to think of that consumer journey. You have to make sure you're really kind
Hmm.
of honing in on all of that. Otherwise you're missing out. Like it's a
Yeah.
total linear process. And I think what I
Hmm.
heard in a conference again earlier this year was, hey, my brand team thinks we're awareness. They're going to do the awareness, and then the retail is going to do that consideration conversion. And it's not that. You have
No.
to be working together holistically the entire
Hmm.
time because
Agreed.
I still firmly believe, and I don't think it's gone anywhere, at the power of three. Like you see the thing at least three times, and then you're going to purchase it because it's now top of mind for you.
Hmm.
And so the brand does need to still advertise, still create that foundation of what
Yeah.
that brand stands for. But then the retail media really comes in and gives you the opportunity to purchase it and really encourages you to purchase it at whatever retailer you happen to be going to and you happen to be
Hmm.
favoring at that moment in time.
Yeah.
And people are not loyal to any retailer anymore. It's
No.
very much except for Costco.
I
Not
was gonna
touching that
say we
one.
can't mess with the
Um,
Costco folks.
the Costco love. But at the end of the day, they're willing to go other places. So it's
Yeah.
like, how do I continue to build that and push that? And I think the marketing funnel is still important. You still need to
Sure.
know if I'm doing a CTV ad, it should be an awareness build, but
Yeah.
know that that awareness is still adding that contacts that I should be buying it at Dollar General
Mhm.
versus, the Walgreens or whatever.
Yep.
And it's just kind of reinforcing it. And if I see it three times and I happen to be at that Dollar General, I'm going
Yeah.
to purchase that product. And I think that's just the important part is just kind of
Mhm.
continuing to see holistically how all of the plans work together. And it's not yours is here and mine is here. It's we have to work together in like that circle. And I
Yeah.
think we're calling it now it's more of that spiral and that flywheel is what
Yeah.
we're calling it.
Flywheel. Mhm, makes sense.
And that's you have to embrace the flywheel versus a marketing funnel,
Yeah.
which it's hard for me to even say flywheel for it, but that's really
Same.
where the industry is going, and it's no longer the funnel, it's the
Yeah.
flywheel.
Yeah, the funnel has definitely collapsed. Like you're 100% right with impulse buying, with immediate gratification, being able to sell through video, through social, all of those
Mhm.
different things. I mean, no, none of us sitting here today can't say we haven't done a little clickety click late at night, and we're like, wait, what did I buy? It just shows
True.
up at home, and you're like, I think I remember buying this.
I know. I'm like, I have
Age
that
me.
Amazon box, and I don't know what's
Uh-huh.
in it.
It's like Christmas all over again. I mean, I don't know. I
Yes,
got myself something. I was half asleep,
it was
but I know it's
fun.
going to be great when I open it up.
I know. Like, I don't know why about this. It's fine.
Oh, awesome. So yeah, I mean, I did have a question in here about AI, which I feel like you kind of already addressed. So I'm going to
Okay.
bypass that one and go to for the brands that are just beginning, because we talked a lot about big brands.
Oh yeah.
But for those, 'cause I have a lot of friends who own small businesses that are
Oh
working
yeah.
to build retail media as like a growth strategy.
Hmm.
And it's obviously it's hard, right? You're
It's
contending with
so
a
hard.
lot of different people, a lot of
It's
different
so
things, trying to
hard.
get into these stores. It's like moving a mountain.
Yeah.
What are some what are some places in which they could start looking for opportunities?
Yeah, I think the thing that you have to think about is when you're a smaller brand, you have to think about what retailer do I really want to push on, and really
Mhm.
double down on. Because if you get into some of the bigger ones, the bigger players have very high minimums. And if you're a smaller player, you don't have your minimum is their minimum is your budget for the year.
Yeah,
Does
right?
not make sense. So you have to be
Mhm.
a little bit more scrappy. You have to think beyond just the RMNs. Some RMNs do have lower budgets,
Mhm.
especially like the smaller retailers.
Yeah.
So you have to think, okay, where's the consumers that I want to move the needle? How do I get to them? And in some cases, you might be starting off small and just doing search across different ones.
Yeah.
Search is probably the best one to be in because it's the
Mhm.
closest way to conversion.
Yep.
But you have to be driving that awareness and that consideration too.
Yeah.
Search is more of that consideration conversion
Mhm.
metric. So you have to think beyond. It's like maybe it's partnering with third party providers, building that awareness, building that
Yeah.
momentum. Because I've talked to several retailer or CPGs that are so small and they're like, yeah, we're gonna go into Kroger and we're gonna advertise within Kroger. And I'm like, okay, but Kroger doesn't know, like KPM doesn't understand how to do
Mhm.
division level media. They aren't made that way. They're made at the
Yeah.
national level. So if you're not
Mhm.
able to do that division level and you don't have presence and across all of their divisions, you're out of luck and you're
Yeah.
just wasting money and not getting it very far. So you need to figure out, how do I make my dollars stretch further? And
Mhm.
what is some of those more economical ways of getting to where I need to be? So like if
Right.
staying within the Kroger world, because we're in Cincinnati,
Yeah.
is we've got like more economical is your search. Your targeted on-site ads are economical, but those may
Yeah.
not work for you. I've
Mhm.
had several clients that they don't work because most of my sales are in store
Yeah.
versus online. So it's just really kind of embracing like what can work. And I think having that test and learn mentality, try something.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to try
Yes.
something. And then
Mhm.
once you find that tried and true, then like continue to think through your budgets, but
Mhm.
always have that test and learn, because that test and learn is going to like help you tremendously well. There's
Mhm.
several times in my career where I was like, I don't want to test that. And I'm so glad I tested it because it became so monumental to future campaigns. Had I not, I would
Yeah.
have been behind the eight ball for everything else. So,
Mm.
being scrappy, understanding your consumer, understanding how you're approaching it and where to find them is going to be really key to it.
Yeah, and I will say just a cautionary tale. I mean, when you are a small, even a mid-sized company, like
Mm-hmm.
retail could be the thing that if you go bust if you're not careful. We have
Yep.
another podcast I want to plug for a second because it's so amazing. You should check it out too. It's called the Together Marketing Rescue, and we
Mm-hmm.
had this exact conversation last week with a young woman here in Cincinnati who owns the Davis Cookie Company. So y'all go
Oh,
check out the
fun.
Davis Cookie Company. Her website. They have a food truck that comes to your
Ooh.
office, so you guys should get some cookies for an office day.
Yep.
They do like cookie classes. She does so much. She's got online sales, a cookie subscription box. And, we got to talking about retail and she got into the Oakley Krogers. And my
Mm-hmm.
two hosts for the show
Mm-hmm.
were just gushing because the whole point of this podcast is to bring small businesses in that are struggling with a particular pain point and we help figure out how to diagnose that situation and then help support them with marketing. And then our members who provide marketing services pitch them. So we're
Mm-hmm.
putting small businesses that are struggling with marketing and marketers who provide marketing services from like either independent contractor or boutique agency situation to then
Mm-hmm.
like meet their next client is so cool.
Yep.
And so our members are getting new business and these small businesses are getting support. But it was really funny because, Christina Davis, the woman who owns it, was like, well, we have to learn what products are going to be working at shelf, because something I learned that I didn't know is that you pay for the products that don't sell.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
so outside of like all the additional fees and costs to like market and store to advertise for the shelf space, then also if it doesn't sell. And so that's where I think your approach of test and learn is so wise. And I think Christine is such a smart businesswoman. So Christine, if you're listening, seriously, like so smart,
Yep.
to say like, yeah, retail is our goal, but
Mhm.
ultimately I can't put anything and everything behind it because I could lose my shirt. Like I really need to
Right.
do it as a phased, more agile learning approach. But yeah, so you can check it out for Oakley Kroger's if you're close by, listeners.
Oh, I totally
Davis
am.
Cookie Company. They have like cookie dough. It's like a Cookie Monster one. It's like blue. It's
Ooh.
really fun
I know
for
someone who goes
kids
all the
as well.
time to Oakley Kroger, so I'll
Yeah,
make her buy
there
me
you
one
go.
when she goes next time.
Yeah, love it. Love supporting our small businesses. All right, I've got one more question before we go into our power round, and then it looks like we've got actually one quick question from our audience. Actually,
Mhm.
I'm going to go ahead and ask Nancy's question. She wants to know regarding audience data: are you referencing the RMN data or the brands data, and which data is the more valuable, and how do you look at the data as a whole? Great
I
question,
think
Nancy.
it's important to look at both, to be honest with you. And sometimes it's harder to get the first party data, aligned to the both. But at the end of the day, being able to kind of digest it both is going to get you a lot further. But at the same time, you have to understand the RMN's data, because that's what they're talking to with the retailer, and the retailer is pulling that. They're not pulling the first party data that you have necessarily, and so you have to understand how yours relates to theirs, and yours might be telling a slightly different story, and be able to tell why it's telling a different story, so that you can talk intelligently to your retailer. But at the end of the day, if you can do both, it's better to do both and to really kind of streamline it, because if you're doing your own data, you can take it across the different partners that you have,
Yeah.
versus just doing your data versus just their data. Because I've definitely seen some partners and manufacturers getting into trouble just talking about their data all day long, and the
Yeah.
retailer's like, it's not matching mine, and there's like this destruction of conversation if you're
Right.
not
It all
able to
goes
kind of like
downhill.
swing both ways. So it's really
Right.
good to be able to show in both terms, and to be able to understand and dissect it. At
Yep.
the end of the day, the goal is to ultimately use your first party data and tie it back to that retailer media data. But if you're not as well advanced with first party on your side, RMN's fine. Just understand the nuances, understand how it's devised and created in order to like really talk it.
Yeah. And knowing that it's not your own, right? It's like your
Yeah.
owned data. That's
Yeah,
the word. Yeah.
exactly.
Awesome.
So
Thanks. We'll keep the questions coming if you've got them, folks. We're still here. We've got a few minutes left. All right. Before we move into the power round, I wanted to know, as we look forward, how do you see the relationship between retail, media, e-commerce, and traditional marketing evolving in the next few years?
it is 100% going to evolve. It's going to constantly change.
Yeah.
I feel like I can't even predict some of the things that'll probably be on the horizon.
Yeah.
I mean, we have so many different things that are talking about it. Like, people have talked about the metaverse.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to happen?
Right.
Is it not going to
So
happen?
QR
Is it going
codes,
to,
but maybe not as exciting. I'm
but
sorry.
not the metaverse?
Metaverse fans.
It's like, I don't know if how big the metaverse is going to be, or if
Yeah.
it's not. Like, we
Yeah.
keep talking about it, we keep dancing
Yeah.
around it. Now, like you and I talked about earlier, like QR codes were like, oh, it's going to be big, and then it wasn't. Now it is. It's
Right.
just
Yeah.
mainstream.
Yeah.
So I feel like things are constantly evolving. I will say that what's going to happen is traditional media is going to have to start thinking beyond their traditional metrics,
Yeah.
right? You're going to have to think beyond like that impressions and that store
Mhm.
counts. And you're going to have to get a little bit more creative, and whether that's with AR technology, or it's definitely with the personalization, it's making that data work harder and smarter for you
Yeah.
using that AI technology that we have out there. It's definitely going to have that greater emphasis on measurement and attribution. I mean,
Mhm.
thinking beyond like everything's siloed. It's very much an
It
integrated
is.
approach.
Yeah.
And if we aren't integrating, we aren't looking at it in an integrated way,
Right.
we aren't thinking forward
Holistically.
thinking, we're
Yeah.
really going to be behind the ball game. Because I know that there's some brands out there that are just now starting
Yeah.
to talk about digital media, and I'm like, well, you're a
Yeah.
little behind the ball. um,
Right.
we'll get there. But it's not a lost cause. I mean,
Mhm.
you have to start somewhere, but it's like
Sure.
you're having to think holistically. If you want to be something, you have to always embrace that change, always embrace that ambiguity. Like, had someone not told me early in my career, like, you need to understand digital,
Yeah.
I would not be where I am at today had I
Yeah.
not embraced it, or had I walked away from my boss when he said, "Yeah, you're doing shopper marketing." I'm like, "No, I don't want to do that."
Right.
Um, I'm here for brand management. I don't know what you're talking
Mhm.
about. So had I not done that, and had you not had that embrace, you're not
Yeah.
going to see that future, because the
Right.
future is stuff that we haven't even dreamed up yet at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
I agree.
And you have to make sure you're embracing that and taking it
Mhm.
to that next level.
Yeah, I agree with you. The more like holistic we can look at all of it and the less siloed we are, it makes so much sense. I mean, it's funny. I was just kind of commenting today in a morning meeting with somebody about even our name, Together Digital. We were started in 2016 when we had digital only agencies and above the line and PR and, influencer. It's like all these different things. And now you don't see just everybody's digital, right? We need to be thinking forward and ahead and holistically as brands, because again, our customers, they don't see those things as segmented or siloed.
Yeah, it's all integrated and it's all going to work together. Like, I
Mhm.
don't think traditional media is going to be what it traditionally has been.
Oh
I think it's
yeah.
going to be definitely more integrated. And you
Hmm.
can start to see some of it, like, even if you listen to the radio,
Yeah.
like, I've noticed drastic changes with just how radio is showcasing it, how TV is showcasing themselves.
Hmm.
And it's just, they have to think beyond.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're going to end up becoming, and this is a really bad analogy, but you're going to become the Sears of the world, where Sears doesn't exist.
Oh,
It was one of the leading
heartbreak.
manufacturers and
Right.
retailers. Now it's not, because it
Ugh,
didn't embrace the
it
change.
did not. Great example. Don't be Sears. Oh, I do miss a good
Exactly.
Sears run. Put on your Sunday best, kids. All right. Ashley wants to know, could you suggest one or two resources for someone just getting into retailer media that is consistently a solid place to go for new cutting edge info? Outside of you, of course.
Outside of me, you could always reach out to me, of course.
Yeah.
But the places that I would start, I got started with Path to Purchase. Path to Purchase was where I went to the first conference. That's where my boss sent me to learn about shopper marketing.
Nice.
It's still traditionally, it's really a strong place to go and to get that information.
Yeah.
If you're looking at specific retailers, Kantar Retail IQ is always a great source of information, as well as if you're trying to dive into retail and understand them in a more detailed level, if you will.
Hmm.
LinkedIn, ironically, is one
Yeah.
of my favorite sources, because people are always willing to help within LinkedIn. And
Hmm.
there's so many groups and chats that you can just ask a random question, and
Yeah.
there's no judgment, which
Hmm.
I love that. And
Yeah.
that's how I've taught a lot of myself on different
Hmm.
things, is through that. I do list or get daily updates from, like, Retail Dive. I think that's what it is. And there's different Marketing Dive. There's a whole bunch of different retail updates that you can get, and those are just really helpful, just to get those
Yeah.
snapshots of what's happening in the industry. And if something sparks your curiosity, you dive deeper and you can learn what's happening, because understanding your retailer that you're
Hmm.
working with and what they're facing in their everyday is actually going to help inform your strategy and
Yeah.
how you're approaching them and working
Hmm.
with them and their customers. Because you got to know, hey, Target is facing some backlash recently. So how do
Right.
I combat that? How do I make things unique and different
Hmm.
in that space?
I love it. I love it. That's such great advice. Those are some good places. I'm sure our listeners are taking lots of notes. I would say one other thing too is just like, you said people reach out. I love that. So we'll drop
Mhm.
your LinkedIn link into the show notes and everything. But also just that whole aspect of like peers as mentors, like finding other
Yes.
women that are in the retail media space.
Hmm.
We have a lot of that going right now with Together
Always.
Digital. In fact, our peer group applications are open. Members, if you're listening, sign up and get your peer group. Having your own little personal board of directors, women that are kind of
Mhm.
like in the same space that know the pains of
Yes.
all that, but then also can like talk about life and everything else in
Oh, yeah.
between is so beneficial. So I think surrounding yourself, finding other communities or other ways to plug into communities that are in alignment with or have people that do retail marketing, it's just a smart way to go.
It
You're going
is.
to feel like you're with your peeps. They're going to know the pain points, but they're also maybe a half step ahead of you, which is maybe all
Yes.
you need to kind of keep ahead, because sometimes it feels like, oh, we have to keep up, but then
Yeah.
we also have to keep our jobs and manage our families and we
Mhm.
want to live,
Yep.
and so I think community is another great way to do that.
Oh,
So
yeah. I had a friend call me the other day. She's like, okay, I'm new to this and tell me what you need, what I need to
yeah,
know. And she's like, in the 30-minute conversation we had, she's like, you've taught me more than I've been able to learn at work. And thank
I
you, because her
love
boss is so
it.
busy. They're just
Yeah.
constantly moving.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, hey, what do you want to know? And I can help,
This is so
And
good.
just, I think anyone in the industry is typically has that persona. And if they
Yes.
don't, that's sad, because it's a very small industry we're in.
Right.
Everyone tends to cross paths at one place or another.
Yeah, no, I love it. All right. Well, we are at time. That hour
Yes,
just
we
flew
are.
by. Thank you so much, Dina, for your insights and your
You're
wisdom and for
welcome.
sharing it so freely. Again, you're really inspiring and encouraging a lot of our listeners that are new to the space or interested in the space. And thank you, listeners, for all your fantastic questions. We love it when we hear from you as well.
Yes,
All
definitely.
right.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. My pleasure. All right, everyone. So, this episode will probably be up and live later next week. So, keep an eye on that. Check us out on YouTube. We are on Spotify. We are on iTunes, wherever you stream your podcast. You'll probably find us. The next 2 weeks, I'm actually traveling for some speaking. So, I'll miss you all here, but I will be back at the end of May for some more amazing conversations. Everyone, till then, keep asking, keep giving, and keep growing. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Produced by Heartcast Media.